hear staff's comments. You all have a conversation. The applicant comes to the meeting and is ready to address whatever. That's the extent of it. But again, it's up to you, however you want to handle it.
Right. Well, could there be a process in place though that, only in those unusual circumstances would those come to the board? Like we wouldn't have to go through every one of them. That would fall on the planning department. But when you did hit these special, circumstances, then yes, of course, the board would weigh in and say that yes, this needs to be done or not be done. But I agree with David that I don't think that we need to go through every single one, because I don't think that's in our charter.
Yeah, the hard thing about that, Martin, is we don't have a procedure that allows us to sort of deal with something in an unscheduled way. I'm also on the board of a charity where if something comes up in between meetings, we can just get unanimous consent. And I know there are a lot of sort of administrative matters that if I needed to just email everybody and get 7 yeses, that wouldn't be such a problem. But the law doesn't permit us to operate that way. So, we kind of have to schedule everything in advance. I think there's plenty of room for just, having a conversation between either the chair or the vice chair with the staff about completeness of applications and dealing with them that way, which is sort of what we've been doing, just in terms of ministerial stuff. I have probably not been as aggressive about bouncing things that may not be complete as I could be. So maybe that's on me. All right.
One thing, if I could just point out, there's no reason you can't deliberate. You don't have to call it a work session. You have a meeting. It's just not a public meeting. It's not for public hearings. So you just schedule a meeting, whether it's for discussing whatever you want to discuss. That may be good after the meeting when you don't get to it, because sometimes deliberations. I've always found sometimes deliberations take place after a lot of new things have happened, and this way you can sit back, and if you're going to have that meeting, if you need it, if you don't need it, you cancel it. I mean, I don't know. All I'm saying is I'm not sure I understand the purpose, because I do think that for completeness of an application, that can certainly be done. Tom, you can oversee that, I would think, and it's really a matter of, is it right there? There's always going to be new things that are needed, but that's the purpose of the meeting, to hear them.
I think Seamus has been waiting with extraordinary patience.
Yeah, I don't think what I'll say is very different. One, I would like to say that I'm a big fan of the work session period, because I do think that we end up with very long meetings where people get tired towards the end, and also that we don't, get to things that I think would be good work that this commission could be doing outside of just applicants. So I think it's good. I think that the main priority should be those items, tree laws, our application, the LWRP update. Because I think those are things that, I feel, and maybe other commissioners as well, I would like to see progress on those, over the time when I'm on the commission. So I think that should be the primary purpose. I think there's 2 things that I could think of that might be useful on specific applicants. And I think this would be pretty consistent with Doreen, David, and Martin, really, which is if something new is coming up, I don't think it makes sense to spend much time. I think we do our best work there with the applicant present. But if anyone just has a question like, hey, do they even have this permit? It gives us a chance to be like, yeah, it might have been hard to see, but it's there. Or no, I don't think they do. And then we decide what to do with that. The other is I actually think it could be helpful not to necessarily have a long discussion, but if a applicant has been before us once or twice or 3 times and is coming again, just to recoalesce on where we're at. Hey, last time that they were here, we asked them to come back with this, and that's likely the primary, purpose this time, or just kind of a recheck-in, particularly on one where we've had discussion numerous times. At that point, we could just all get together. So that's what I'll add on the topics.
I will second almost 100% of what Seamus just said.
Yeah, I think basically everybody's agreeing with you, Seamus. That makes a lot of sense. Okay.
Like to say is we have rules and procedures which are clearly spelled out, and we do have the opportunity for special meetings, for quote unquote work sessions, to do the work that we can't catch up on. And we also have the opportunity for I forgot what it's called in our rules and procedures. It's not actually on the agenda, but it's not a preliminary review, But, if an applicant doesn't have all the information, we can do a cursory review. I forgot what it's called. I could look it up. But, that might be the opportunity not to open up and move forward on the actual application. That all can be done in our regular meetings. But we can call a special meeting when we need to, when we get backlogged, because that's in our rules and procedures. And as far as the completeness of the application, in our rules and procedures and our application, it shouldn't be on our agenda unless at least the basic information that's on the checklist and what we require in our application we have. Additional information we can always ask for, and that's our prerogative to make the application complete. So we have the rules and procedures, our codes, and it's all spelled out. So personally, I don't think a work session is necessary. We can call a special meeting for items that we have to get to.
Mhm.
It's in our rules and procedures. I circulated that last month when I couldn't attend.
Very helpful. Thanks. Okay. So I think it's probably the best course of action is just to take under advisement the discussion we've had, and we may discuss this a little further at the end of our Wednesday regularly scheduled public meeting. We can move on, and the approval of minutes is one of those things that I want to take a little time to go through them, and I didn't get as much time with the minutes as I would like. So unless anybody really has a problem with it, I'm going to punt approval of the June 17 minutes to our meeting 2 days from now.
That's fine.
The two applicant specific items on the agenda, I think we just had a discussion about, why we're not gonna get into the meat of those applications now. But there is one thing that is strictly a staff matter. I wanted to check in on schedule with council. Christy?
Yeah, no, I'm here.
Yeah, we wanted to get some legal research on the applicable sewer issues, and I just wanted to check in on schedule for that, because I don't want to have the 1167 Grecian folks come before us and have us tell them, look, we can't make any progress until we have a legal memo on this.
Well, I think there's two factors to it, which we discussed previously last week. One of which is that the village manager and the assistant village manager have actually asked the county to take a look at those sewer lines due to the information that we got about the possible leakage. As far as I know, we haven't received anything from the county yet, any indication as to whether or not they're going to want to pursue that and see if there is a problem, since it is so close to the wetlands. That won't necessarily color our legal research, but I think we do, or it's up to the commission as well, whether you would like to wait to see how that's handled by the county, or at least see whether there's some type of indication as to how the county wants to handle it. In the meantime, I have spoken to Brian Hildenbrand, and so we are aware of what we're looking into, and we've started that process. So I think it would be fair to say that for the November meeting, there should be something for the commission to review.
Okay, so does the applicant yet know that they're likely off calendar for October? Because I think it's pretty clear they're off calendar for October.
I believe so. I don't know if they'll have any pushback about that. I know Kristen Motel is here, but it is a work session, so I'm not sure if you'd want to hear from her. But I believe she's aware that I think the hope was that they want to figure out what's going on with their application so that they can see whether they need to amend their plans. But they also know that the county will be looking into this. So.
Everyone knows at this point what question I ask right before we take a vote. Do you have all the information that you need to render your consistency determination? I know for sure that I do not, and I know for sure what I am looking to have in front of me to get those answers. Martin?
Yeah, also to note that the file that's been put up there about the incomplete DEC application as well for that property. So that's also affecting their,
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Yep.
Thank you for remembering that. I didn't have that in my notes.
And in addition to the DEC memo, the DEC is asking for our consistency determination on this or feedback within their memo. And I'd like to point out that I've searched all the documents, and maybe the planners can help me, but I cannot find the topographical survey with special flood hazard areas noted on them that we're supposed to receive as part of a complete application. It says so in the record in Ms. Motel's initial submission and even the second submission, but that topographical survey is not within our records. And we haven't even evaluated the flood zone information on the property yet. We need to get back to the DEC with something on this. They're requesting our feedback.
Wait, are they requesting feedback or they want to know our consistency? Because those are,
Hang on a second.
that's a bit of a
I'll
chicken
pull up
egg
the-
problem. We're waiting for them on the permit. So
Yeah, and,
Not
and
really.
if I'm not mistaken, they sent a notice of incompletion, notice of incompletion, incomplete application regarding
Hang on.
this.
Hang on. When they notify us, we have 30 days to respond. So it says the proposed project is located, we know that. By copy of this letter, staff requests the village confirm in writing whether the proposed project is consistent with the adopted LWRP.
well, okay,
Yeah.
we don't know that until we vote consistency.
It's just well, I'm going to suggest that it's just as incomplete for us as it is for them, and maybe we could work out a better time frame.
If
You
their
know.
if their basis for saying it's incomplete is that we haven't,
It's not.
Pardon?
It's not. That's not their basis. The
Oh.
basis for it being incomplete is that they're talking about how the house is situated and that it can't be situated any other way. Or there's a whole bunch of different things in here.
There are a whole bunch of other things, and it's similar to what we have discussed in our in our deliberations. But what they are saying, the proposed project is located within the adopted LWRP in the village of Mamaroneck. According to their law, I'm paraphrasing, the DEC is required to coordinate with the local government responsible for the LWRP in order to confirm consistency with the LWRP. By copy of this letter, staff requests the village confirm in writing whether the proposed project is consistent with the adopted LWRP.
Doreen, I don't have that letter. Where did you, because that's separate from this thing that I'm reading. So where
Within the of incomplete application, it's on page 2, under coastal zone management.
all we can respond to that is that we have not yet made a determination.
No, actually, what we've done in the past with applicants, whether it be for local consistency or otherwise, is deemed it not consistent due to incompleteness. We've done that before. Our commissions did that all the time years ago.
What was that again?
Doreen, is this a chicken and egg issue that comes up? I don't know that I've seen it yet, where we like to review things once everything else is done, but we are actually part of the loop to get done. Is that kind of what you're saying?
We're part of their loop. They can't move forward. They can't move forward with seeker until consistency is done.
Because it
Just
did look
like-
to me,
Unless
It could-
we deem it neg deck or type 2, in which case.
We don't do seeker on this. They
We are
do.
not the lead. We are not the lead agency for SECR on this.
so it looked to me, and
And-
Martin, I think this is what you were saying. I mean, it looks to me like there's a bunch of other things that are requested as well. But I did see this component of the letter.
Yeah, I see it now. I missed the part about the village needing to respond.
Maybe Mr. Long could put that up so we can all see it on the second page.
Yes, I'll do that now. Give me 1 second.
So this is the coordinate. DEC always coordinates with us. Okay? Their regulations different than ours in the wetland permit. And
Can you see it?
consistency.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Coastal management.
Yeah, so there are 8 things that Commissioner Chair Burt, there are the 8 things that come up here before it talks about what our responsibility is.
Yep. Okay. All right. We're gonna have to.
On Wednesday, we should definitely consider getting back to them to let them know maybe that we're in the same boat and we are not finding it consistent due to incomplete application materials.
Well, we're gonna have to respond to this in a timely manner. So, yeah. So this is gonna have to be come up for discussion on Wednesday, and we'll deal with the letter. That may be the only thing that we're able to effectively move forward on this application, but we'll have to deal with the letter. All right, let's keep moving because that's as far as we're going to get with that.
Hey, Chairman Burt, quick question, if you don't mind. I just wanted to confirm that I'm seeing this right. Do you guys all agree? And this is the type of thing that I think is, briefly helpful about these work sessions. For each of these 2 applications, there's only one new document for each. Do you guys agree with? Okay, I was just want to make sure I wasn't missing a cache of documents somewhere. Okay, thanks. Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah, no, but we know for sure for 1167 Grecian that we're waiting on a number of things, and those things, for speaking for myself, are necessary for me to make a determination.
Chairman, is there, with regard to that Grecian point, when I went there and I took pictures of them, which I have, there's a pipe going along into the water there. And I don't recall that being addressed. I'm sorry, I don't have my files. I started to work non-remotely 2 days a week, and that's very confusing where I leave things. But it's always the wrong place. But did they address that? I don't recall that being addressed. There's a pipe from the property going into the water that drains something. I have no idea what. I'm happy to.
Well, if I may, the fact that you're bringing it up, the applicant is hearing it. And so come Wednesday, the applicant should be prepared to address the matter.
Okay.
Well, I thought we weren't going to have the applicant on our agenda because we have outstanding information.
Well, unfortunately, we also have a letter from DEC that requires that we deal with it, more expeditiously, and we don't really have. And we can do that just by letter, but then all we can do is I can send out a draft and people can respond.
Chair. Would you like either myself or planning staff to contact Victoria Lawrence? I think it was Victoria Lawrence at DEC and just confirm. Because I think her letter needs clarification because it looks like she lists 8 items that are necessary, but then also these 2 extra items. I can't tell whether she's holding up the application for your determination or whether it's something that they ultimately will need, but won't hold up their determination.
That's probably a useful call. Actually, maybe I could try to make time to do that together tomorrow. We can do that tomorrow.
I could say with confidence they're not holding it up because of our consistency determination. But let's get it from her.
Okay, yeah, that would be useful. All right, let's try to call them tomorrow and get clarification on that point.
Okay.
Because if also on the timing of the letter, if depending on what they say, there may be nothing that we need to do Wednesday on this. Okay. I don't think we can make any progress right now on 652 Shore Acres.
I agree. I mean, there's no new documents, right? So it's, I don't even know what we would discuss. I agree.
Do you want a resolution prepared?
Actually, we have something missing. The topographical survey with the special flood hazard area, not in the documents at all. And it's important because I looked at the elevation certificate and I'm a little confused as to what's going on there.
So just to clarify, Chair Burt, you said Shore Acres, but we're actually talking about Grecian, correct?
No, we've moved on.
Okay.
Grecian, we know where we are. We know there are things outstanding, and the only thing that we can do until we have more information from county and staff is to address the DEC's letter, which we're going to do by try to get some clarification on the phone on what exactly they need and what exactly the timeline is for them, and whether they're waiting for us to wait for them. So we'll know whether we have anything to discuss on Wednesday night.
Yeah.
We've moved on to 652 Shore Acres.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. I got lost in this switch.
All right,
So
and
on
Dorian,
Shore,
you said
yeah,
you-
we don't
you
have
need-
new information posted, but what's missing from the application is the topographical survey with the special flood hazard area documented on it. And as I said, the elevation certificate is very difficult to understand without that survey. Because it's in an AE, I believe, off the top of my head, 12. And there's,
I think that's right. I think I read that earlier today, Dorian. Yeah, AE 1213.
Now, I went on the village website to see what, the special flood hazard area is. And I'm not going to say, since this is a work session, what I saw, but I'll share that with everybody on Wednesday night. And I have some other questions about the flood zone in that area and what's proposed to be done. Because our flood zone laws really need to be looked at as to what they're proposing. Because it deals with policies 11, 12, and 17.
Okay, let's, can we move on to the administrative actions? Or does anybody else have something on the applicant issues?
Did you want a resolution for 652?
It's probably fair to have one ready without, without prejudging for anybody that they have the information necessary to cast a vote. I'm not saying anybody does or should,
Right.
but it's the safe course is to have resolutions prepared.
Okay.
Quick question. Was everyone able to access the information in your notes?
William, I'm getting a lot of distortion in your audio.
Not better.
Yeah, well, you're muted now, so we can't hear you.
I'm gonna call in.
Call in.
He asked if all of you could access the items on Novus.
Yes, I was able to, yeah. I'll give William a second to get his audio.
Okay. Are you guys hearing my mouse clicking away here? Because I don't have much room. Sorry.
I can hear it now that you say it. I don't find it distracting.
Okay.
I had a partner with a bad habit of typing right next to the phone on conference calls, so I have a high tolerance for other people's work noises.
Or a built-in filter.
I'm at my desk, so I don't have much room.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Much better.
Much better.
Okay.
Okay,
Fair
you were
enough.
asking whether we were all able to access the materials. Speaking for myself, I was with no difficulty.
Okay.
On Nova
Fair enough.
Agenda, yes, but the planning side, I have difficulty logging in at times.
I don't know why. I mean, but I don't know why that is. You're the only. So unfortunately, you were the only person who's had the issue. I don't know what's going on with that. I can't
I don't
tell
either.
you.
Word, but that, as long as it's on Novus Agenda, I can get to everything.
Well, I just want to point out that the Novus agenda is not, I don't post that until we get closer to the meeting. The Novus account that I sent with the, where you have to log in, it's only for you as board members, and it allows you to see things as planning staff post them in real time. So if we posted something today, for as long as the link is open, you'd be able to see it as soon as we post it. Whereas if you went through the agenda system that's posted via the village's website, that's not posted until actually, you know, myself, the chair, Amber, and Christy, you know, we've kind of gone through the agenda to make sure everything is what it's supposed to be.
Well, that's usually done by Friday, right?
That's definitely done by the Friday before your meeting. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
So, okay, so are we, can we move on to the administrative issues now? We've got, the first thing that we've got up on our agenda that we keep kicking over from meeting to meeting, and I'd like to advance the ball on, is the amendments to the tree ordinance. I've gone through it. We had previously had a whole bunch of stuff that we tried to incorporate into the new wetlands law, which is the next item. Most of that is dealt with in the tree ordinance. I went through it, and it's not obvious to me that, I went through it, and I think I understand it well enough to know what I want to do with it. So I'm going to open it up to other people's comments.
I had a question in that procedurally, has the Board of Trustees done seeker on this? Has a public meeting started? And we don't have a coastal assessment form because that's the way we advise the Board of Trustees on consistency. I don't know, what the purpose of our review and getting back to them is at this point. I don't think they had a public meeting on this yet, have they?
So they typed it as a type 2. William, I know as planner, has a different recommendation for the Board of Trustees that it should be an unlisted action. I don't know if that recommendation has been made to them yet. If it was an unlisted action, you would be looking at it for consistency. If it's a type 2 action, my understanding is you're not looking at a consistency, you're just looking at it for comments. If I'm wrong in that, please, welcome to tell me otherwise. The public hearing was supposed to open on September 28th? I know that I think what they did is they technically opened it and adjourned it because the tree committee was getting a lot of feedback on the law, and they were taking those comments into consideration, and we're going to go back, not to the drawing board, but to take another look at the law. Some of those comments did include planning board's comments, so they would also take into consideration HCZM's at this time. So I don't think you have to hold off your review until they come back from their discussion, but I know that it has been postponed essentially.
Except that we don't know if we're reviewing to comment or voting consistency.
Well, like I said, right now they have already typed it as a type 2. So if you're going to go with what they've typed it as is, you're just providing comments. If they ultimately choose to change their seeker determination and it's unlisted, then at that point you would be typing it for consistency.
Okay.
Or excuse me, reviewing it for consistency.
All right. Typically, when we provide feedback that is merely comment, we do it by letter. And it's easy enough to do that sort of offline by everybody sending comments to the chair. I'll centralize them, put them in a letter. I can circulate for comment as long as we don't all look at it and deliberate on it together, as long as it's just out from me to you, back from you to me. So I don't really have comments on this. But if other folks do, it does a lot of what I was trying to do with the wetlands law, and it does it, I think, more succinctly than I had managed to. So if other folks have comments, what I'd like to do is just have everybody send the comments to me, and I will centralize it in one letter. And then people can comment on the letter before we send it off. We should be able to turn that around in just a few days.
Mr.
I have
Chair,
a-
do you want the comments to come to you, or should the comments come to staff, or staff to centralize?
If
It's up to you.
I tend to want it to I tend to want it to read the way I'd write it. I have no problem with staff taking a first shot at it. I'm good at it. If you want to take the first shot, that's fine. I'm just telling you, I will want it to end up reading the way I write things. But other than that, but I have no problem with you taking the first cut. Either, centralizing comments, we just have to not deliberate. It can't be a round table. It's got to go, from each commissioner individually.
Yeah, I also don't really have any comments. I like it, but just curious if anyone thinks there's particular intersection with our commission that's worth debate. Otherwise, I really don't have any comments either, and like your path forward, I guess.
I mean, it certainly intersects. It's especially around 77A44, around the different rules for cutting in wetlands as distinct from other protected trees.
Mhm.
The reason I have no comments is because I agree with the way they've done it.
Right.
I
Yeah,
do
it's-
have
yeah.
I have a question on wording when laws are written. Is there a real difference between the word shall and must?
This is a Bob Spolzino special because everyone goes crazy because he changes shall to must. And the way that his view is that it shouldn't be so legalese. You should be able to read it as almost as if you'd say it. And so it's one of his things, I guess, that he changes all the shalls to must. So there is not a real difference. They essentially mean the same thing.
Well, I've heard the zoning board really use the term when it says shall, it means you absolutely shall. I just asked that question because, I don't think laws are up for interpretation. What's read is read, and what it says. However, I don't think we want to get into problems. The other question I had is on probably has nothing to do with our commission, but in reviewing this, how will the village determine the boundaries of a property owner's property and village property in 318.7.2? By what methodology? And in B1, it says that the village manager or his designee, without notice to the property owner on private property, can go onto property and can remove the tree if it's dangerous and bill the property owner. And I think that's an overreach of, in my opinion, of authority in doing so. I think our current code reads that the property owner is notified, if there's a dangerous or hazardous tree. And also for insurance purposes, a neighbor would be notifying a neighbor about that too. So I'm not understanding how the village can come on private property and evaluate a tree, and the way the code reads to me, even have somebody come on your property and cut it down, and you get the bill.
It says they have 30 days during. They are notified and they're given 30 days.
If you read the language in, let me pull it up.
I'm reading 318.7C.
Yeah, I got to pull it up. I got to get it. I'm slow on a PC. Sorry, people.
So it does only pertain, I think, to situations where safety is at issue. And so it would be if the tree was obstructing lights. So for instance, you wouldn't be able to see I don't know if that would affect then drivers. And then also for if it would be considered a dangerous tree.
This isn't downloading for me. Why not?
And, you know, and also, while any of us are free to be as interested in that as we want as citizens, as commissioners, we do 44 policies. It's not in my lane. You know, I mean, I pay attention to plenty of things that happen in the village and weigh in on them in a capacity as, you know, Thomas Burt, private citizen. I can get up at any meeting and say, my name is Thomas Burt and I live at 1421 Raleigh Road, and say my piece.
True, and I can do the same, but we're
right.
not sure the, you know, if we're going to make comments or we're reviewing this for consistency. That was my read.
Yeah, but whether it's comments or consistency, it's when we act as commissioners, you know, our business is our business, and what's outside our purview is outside our purview. You know, we don't.
That's fine. I'll bring my comments to the Board of Trustees as Jane property owner. The other thing is replacement of mature trees. That's always been the subject that we've talked about and Planning Board has talked about. Where it's not possible, it's in 318.7E as in Eagle. Where it's not possible to replace an existing tree in kind due to its size or maturity, there's a recommendation and a chart of replacements. I mean, it's great, but you know, if damage shouldn't occur to a mature tree that's preserved on a property. So, you know, that might be able to be more strongly dealt with.
I think that's a great comment.
Then if damage so happens in the field, you know, and I'll use the expression, someone backs a backhoe into the tree by accident, you know, then they get to cut it down and replace it with smaller trees of smaller breast, you know, whatever, diameter breast height, you know, several other trees, because mature trees are canopy for wildlife. If a tree is dead, it's dead, but if it's viable, and then the development, which we often come and play with best management practices and wetlands, if the development needs to suit the terrain. So if you have the canopy of a tree and a person is dead set about expanding their structure, mature trees should be considered, and the application should be modified in some respect. Everybody doesn't have to be able to build everything within the building envelope. You know, as far as you can to the corners of the building envelope.
All right,
And
we'll
cut down.
take a look at the provisions for mature trees and propose a comment. I think, you know, Seamus said he likes your comment, and I do too.
And I have some thoughts that I'll send you on that. Thanks for bringing that up, Dorian. I think that's a good point.
All right.
Yeah, preserving canopy trees is one of the most important intersections between this law and our purview. So we ought to make sure that we are happy with the language. That is exactly why we're reading it.
So you want comment? Where are comments going to on this? To Thomas or Mr. Long, or how about both?
Yeah, copy us both, because we don't create a quorum by having William and I both on it. Copy us both. One of us will centralize, and then we'll do a little drafting, and then we'll kick it out in a form for everybody to review, see if they're happy with it. And those will be and the letter, when everybody's happy with it, will be the view of the commission.
And question two, Amber's on board now. I just, you know, should Amber be included or not?
Well, we don't have to include the world. William can loop her in because she's within the office.
Okay.
You know, she'll see it, obviously.
Right.
My proclivity is not to make every distribution list include everybody, because we all get too many emails all the time.
Yes. which I just noticed we received too at 5 o'clock that I didn't see.
Okay, so tree ordinance, we've got a path forward. Everybody's going to kick comments to William and I, and we will, and a letter will come back that hopefully incorporates everybody's as they would like to see it done. And if there are further comments after the draft gets sent around, we'll take those into account, and then we'll have a letter that expresses the view of the commission as a whole on the tree ordinance. We're good. Wetlands, the Wetlands Ordinance. When we last looked at this, there were two things that we were trying to get done. We've looked at this several times. There were two things that we wanted to do. One was to harmonize the notice provisions with what we do with notice for other laws, because this was essentially portions of this were pulled from neighboring communities' codes, and the notice provisions did not sync up. That's since been done, and it now provides for the notice to come from the staff to the applicant, and the applicant is responsible for disseminating notice and for paying the cost of it. The other thing was to harmonize it with the tree law, because originally we hadn't previously had a good set of definitions for things like clear cutting, so we included those within the wetlands law, and then the tree law was proposed. The tree law took care of all of that. Now this version of the wetlands law is down to minimal definitions of tree cutting, because it's been harmonized. I looked at that. I was happy with it. Where are folks on this? Has everybody had a chance to review it, and do we know what we want to do with it?
Christie sent an email this afternoon that I couldn't read at 5 o'clock. Is that what's on the agenda?
No.
It's
Okay.
it's an incremental red line, right, Christy?
Yeah, so essentially what's on the agenda, I think, is the final proposed version. What I sent around was the version that shows the difference between our current wetlands law and then what the final says. And I apologize, I know I sent it last minute. It took a very long time because I had to retype most of it. So essentially what I did is I put it in the format that the Board of Trustees usually likes to see. And so what you have on your agenda again is the proposed clean version, and I sent the red line. The red line should be added to the agenda, William, when you have a minute, if we're going to be discussing it tonight. So Doreen, I don't know what's the best way to send it over to you. I sent it as a Word doc.
It doesn't make a difference because I can't open what's on the agenda for some reason on this computer.
Are the bold?
So
I
can't compare them both. I'm clicking on the link, but it's not opening for some reason. But you did send it by email, correct?
I did.
At 5 o'clock. I just haven't had the chance to look at it.
Yeah, I sent it around 4. I don't think, let me put it this way. It's not going to make a huge difference, I think, in your review. It's really just showing the changes to the Board of Trustees that have been made. And I thought it might be helpful to you as a commission to see that as well. It's not changing the substance. It's not changing what you've done so far. It's really just showing the changes that have been made.
I have well, do you want us to raise some questions? Just send an email on it, or just say it, or, I mean, I haven't.
If you know what you want to say, it might make sense to just say it now, but I think what we're probably going to end up with is, if you've got anything else,
I have my notes at the office, but I had one comment here. I looked at, like, where it defines, they added a definition of CEQA. I don't understand, when you define something, it gets very complicated, because here you're defining it. It says Article 8 of the New York State Environmental Conservation Law. And that should be the definition, not that it provides for X, Y, and Z, which this goes on to do. Because if they change that article, then you're left with a misalignment here. In other words, CEQA means the Article 8 of the, New York Environmental. I don't. What it says, providing for environmental quality review of actions that may have a significant
Right.
adverse effect on the environment. But I mean, what if they change? I mean, I don't know.
Right.
You're
Could in
defining.
theory make it wrong. I got you.
Yeah, I mean, it should be just boom. That's what it is. State of CEQA refers to Article 8 of the Environmental Code. Boom, that's what it is. You don't need to go into the substance. You're now restating it, and then if the one gets changed, who knows what happens, right? That's all.
Oh, and the other thing that I'm noticing, just at first glance, oh, please download. It's better to look on my iPad because it's not downloading for me. All right, hang on a second. I know Article 24 of the Environmental Conservation Law was taken out. I just seen that when I saw the email before the meeting. Our wetlands law has to be in compliance with both Article 25 and 24 of Environmental Conservation Law.
Doreen, which are you talking about the one that I sent around, or are you talking about the version that's on the agenda, the final version?
The one sent around.
Right. It could, perhaps I missed something, so I'll search it now.
That was stricken.
Okay, well, I'll have to look. It's possible that I made an error. So
Well, the problem we've been having with our wetlands law is we do also encompass tidal wetlands from the border of where the DEC's wetlands ends to the adjacent area. Bill Sharp's memo was very clear on that. That was for the LWRP update. So both environmental conservation laws, we have to be not within their jurisdiction, so to speak, but in alignment.
if you look at, if you have mine in front of you, section 17 says decision or order of the commission, must be in accordance with Title 11 of Article 24 of the State Environmental Conservation Law.
Yeah, didn't you strike that out? That's stricken out.
So this is why I sent this over, because
192-17, I'm looking at the clean.
192.17. Right?
so your 192.17 is different because when whoever had edited that didn't line the sections up properly, which is part of the reason I sent this through.
All right, but I'm talking about the legislative intent.
So 192. So 192, review and appeal.
No, 192.1. See, if we remove that language, then it's not consistent with our LWRP. Because all that language came from our original wetlands law to implement our LWRP in 1986.
It's hard for me, Doreen, to understand what you're asking on the fly. So give me 1 second, because we're working with two different versions.
So it's what you sent today. And I only got as far as section 192.1 in the legislative intent.
Okay, so give me 1 second while I go up to the top. So that, okay, so go to page 3 at the top. So 192-1C. Therefore, the Board of Trustees of the Village of Mamaroneck, pursuant to Article 24 of the Environmental Conservation Law of the State of New York, declares that is the intent of this chapter to promote XYZ. So all that I did was memorialize the changes that had been made.
I see it now. I see it. But we also have to include Article 25.
Let's see if it's in here. So
it's not in the.
That was stricken by whoever drafted the clean version of the law. It was stricken from the wetlands definition. It was previously in the wetlands definition.
The reason why I bring this up is because Bill Sharp, in his memo to the Board of Trustees, who forwarded to us, talked about in our LWRP I won't even call it a draft because that was our product that we provided to the Board of Trustees, talked about that the village regulatory jurisdiction is also within tidal wetlands, not just freshwater. And I think, if I could remember correctly, Article 24, or it could have it switched. Article 24 might be freshwater wetlands. Article 25 is tidal. If you look at the Article 25, I think it is, I can't remember, of tidal wetlands, there's a permit program that the DEC follows, but we're talking about adjacent areas, our jurisdiction, from that boundary towards our jurisdiction. That's what's being left out. So looking at the environmental conservation laws on both is important. We do not regulate freshwater wetlands in McGidd Pond. That is the DEC's responsibility. But all other freshwater wetlands within the village, we do. On titles, there's nothing in our code that addresses that, and that's something that Bill Sharp brought up in his memo, and we haven't dealt with it.
So, Chair, can I?
Wait, go ahead. Go ahead, ask your question.
So I just want to understand, because normally what's been going on here is there's been small working groups, and that's how these edits have been made. I think Greg Cutler made some of the edits in the beginning. I have not looked at this in terms as an attorney yet, because we agreed that would be done at the Board of Trustees stage. So to memorialize Doreen's edits at this point, is the commission going to handle that? Is that something that you want us to do? Do you want planning?
All right,
This is
I'm gonna
draft, but it might come with an attachment of Bill Sharp's memo, so that we could finally get something done properly, and cover what he was asking for it to be done.
Doreen, Commissioner Rooney, do you have a copy of Mr. Sharp's email or letter?
It's on a previous agenda. Let me tell you which one. Let me look at Novus. It's under the LWRP update on previous agendas if you've carried it forward. It's on this agenda, right? Yeah. No, it didn't carry forward. I'm not seeing links on amending the local waterfront revitalization program at all on Novus agenda.
That's because I didn't have them. If you want to talk, if you're around tomorrow, we can discuss, and I can make sure everything is up to date.
Well, I could just pull it off a prior agenda.
All right. I mean, I think the definition here is meant to be both scientific and broad enough to encompass both freshwater and tidal wetlands.
You see what's stricken in, I don't have the page.
I see what's stricken.
Under wetlands, lands and waters of the state that meet the definition provided in subdivision 1
Right.
of the State Tidal Wetlands Act, it was stricken.
Okay, here's what I'm asking you. Is there anything within the stricken portion that would not also be within the definitions of A or B in this version?
Oh, geez. Hang on a second.
And then, C and D, expand it beyond that. I mean, it's meant to be A, B, C, and D there are meant to be extremely broad. So I don't think the stricken portion is a legal definition that's being replaced by an extremely broad practical definition of wetlands. It's meant to encompass all of it. There shouldn't be anything that's a wetland that's not covered by this law as written. that's been, that's been eliminated by striking old A. New A, B, C, and D should cover more than was covered by A.
It does, however, with Article 25 of tidal wetlands, there are three ways. Do I have to get really technical? There are three ways to go. Either the DEC regulates all tidal wetlands in our village, which they don't because we have some say on it.
Right.
There's the county does it, and if the county defaults, then we do. And if we change this, we're allowing one of those two agencies, in my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, to have jurisdiction over the wetlands where we don't. If you read Subdivision 1 of the State Tidal Wetlands Act, you'll have a better understanding what striking that means.
What it says is lands and waters of the state that meet definition provided by section 250103
Yep.
subdivision 1 of the New York State Tidal Wetlands Act, Article 25 of the Environmental Conservation Law. The approximate boundaries of such lands and waters are indicated in the official tidal wetlands inventory. Yeah. So you're saying you think by striking that we're giving jurisdiction back to the county or the state?
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is you're saying that which we can't, because you have to get in touch with the commissioner of the Department of Environmental Conservation to do this. It's a program where it's their jurisdiction, okay? But we can take over certain jurisdiction as long as we are within their regulatory framework or a higher standard. So maybe it might be a good idea to have the DEC look at this eventually if the Board of Trustees wants to adopt it. I'm not sure because I don't know the legal ramifications. To strike it out of our code that was there previously could be problematic.
Well, okay. Hang on. Let me ask you this. Doreen, let me ask you this way. The way it's written, there are multiple criteria for a wetland. If we simply added back old A, which is a code-based definition of a wetland,
not a problem. Lost you.
You're frozen, Tom.
Oh, I'm not frozen. that was me just staring at the text. Because I think because as I read it, A, B, C, and D together would encompass anything that's within old A. So we probably don't include anything we don't want to include if we reincorporate old A, so that the definition is now A, and then A, B, C, and D become B, C, D, and E.
What about her point about Article 25 and Article 24?
Well, I thought first of all, the larger point, this is supposed to encompass both freshwater wetlands and tidal wetlands. Although the title I noticed the title of the act doesn't say that. The text does. The text definitely includes tidal wetlands to the extent we jurisdictionally can, right? And these four definitions clearly encompass that. Because there's no limitation to freshwater. In fact, if you look at all other marsh areas with tidal or freshwater vegetation, it clearly does incorporate both tidal and freshwater, which is the thing this set out to do. That's basically the reason we're doing this, is because we need to cover both tidal and freshwater.
Right.
So that point I'm not troubled by. Whether you have to say 25 is now why we're down here looking at old A. If we have to say, and we're including anything that's included in the definition of wetland under 25, all right, we can add back old A. So the definition now would be A, B, C, D, and E. I'm fine with that. I don't.
Yeah, but would you need to do that, or could you just put in C? Therefore, the Board of Trustees of the Village of Mamaroneck, pursuant to Article 25 and Article 24 and Article 25 of the Environmental Conservation Law. Just put and Article 25, Article 24 and Article 25.
Yeah, you could do that. C could be all other marsh areas with tidal or freshwater vegetation, including without limitation, everything defined as tidal wetlands within Article 25 of the Environmental Conservation Law. That's what you're suggesting? Just basically incorporate Old A by saying including without limitation everything that's covered by Article 25 of the ECL?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah,
Plain and simple, right?
that works. That works for me. Does anybody else have an issue with that?
As long as we're including both and it makes sense, it's got to be, as long as it's there, it's fine.
Yeah, well, that will certainly protect us if there is if it's an absolute necessity to reference ECL 25, that would protect us. So C would be amended to say including without limitation, wetlands is defined in ECL 25. You got that, Christy? All right, that's a lot of noodling around for a fairly short and non-controversial edit. Okay, people have anything on other sections?
I had one thing, Tom.
Yeah.
So there was, I think it's the definition of removal. Hold on a second. Yeah, definition of remove. So we struck out to dig, dredge, bulldoze, dragline, blah, blah, and it just says now to take out of the wetland. So should that say by any means, to take out of the wetland by any means?
Are you asking if that's what it should say, or is that what it said before?
I'm asking if that's what
Oh,
it should.
yes,
If we should add by any means after at the end of that.
Matter of style, right? I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, it was being very specific before, and it seems like we've gotten, super generic. We've gone from super specific to super generic, and it doesn't.
right. That's deliberate. Right?
Yeah, I get that. So that's why that was the only other thing that sort of stood out to me that, but.
I'm not sure I would say, I'd have to look at how remove is used otherwise or used throughout the law, but I'm not sure that I would say by any means necessary, because that could open you up to mean that I think it would be too broad, because it could open up you to means that maybe are not the most environmentally sound. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I'm afraid that would then give leeway. I don't know.
Well, no, because the reason this is being done is because remove in here is not used permissively. I think if you
right, exactly.
I hadn't been anticipating this question, but my recollection is remove is not used. I see what you're saying, Christy. If remove is used permissively, and then you say by any means, you're giving permission to use any means to do it, that you'd need to do it. It's not used permissively.
Okay, so that's what I was saying, is I wasn't sure how it was used throughout the law, but if it is in that way, then
we should review for that one more time before we vote it. But I think what Martin and I are both thinking is, I think it's used prescriptively. Thou shalt not remove under the following circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's the reason we're going from specific means, which give people the opportunity to remove by some other way, or to take out of the wetland, which means if you're not allowed to remove it, you're not allowed to remove it. I don't care if you have a drone pull it out, you're not allowed to do
right.
that.
Yeah, that's my point. Is that right? Yeah, they're good. So it gives them no way to find a way around it. If you say by any means, that means you can't do it by any way that you think you might be able to do it by.
Yeah, I have sometimes you got to make explicit what's implicit. I think by any means is implicit in to take out of the wetland. If you can't do it, you can't do it by any means.
Right.
But sometimes you're right. It's better to be explicit that there's no way around this.
Right. That's it seems like it's a created loophole. So I was just trying to fill that hole.
Yep. Yeah, I have no problem with by any means. I'm going to take one more look at it to make sure that we both remember correctly that remove is used proscriptively here, so that only does what we mean it to do. Unless somebody's got an issue with it. I actually like that edit. We can do that. Other comments?
Thomas, I have one little bit of an offbeat idea. Since there's a new harbor master in Mamaroneck, should we reach out to him and try to get him to participate in the meeting? Maybe he can give us a little background on new happenings in the east and west basin.
He's the ex officio, right?
Yeah, harbor master, right. Harbor master always has an ex officio role in the
Yep.
in the committee. It'd be good, since he's new, it'd be good to meet him. Let's put that on the agenda if he's able to attend. We can't do that, but well, that's an odd, we can't direct staff to attend, but since the harbor master is an ex officio commissioner, then we can ask and invite.
That's all.
All right.
That's what I'm saying. Even if he doesn't come, it'd be a nice gesture, I think, just to foster.
If he can't
a
make it, he can't make
relationship
it, but
with the corporation.
yeah, thanks for raising that. Let's make sure somebody does that reach out.
Yeah,
Okay, so
staff will do that tomorrow. We'll reach out tomorrow.
thank you, William. So if anyone has anything else on the wetlands law, we've now had several chances to really look at that. We're down to we're down to some very careful looks at some very specific things. We may have 2 edits coming into Wednesday night. I'd like to be able to vote this Wednesday. We've kicked it around a lot. I would like to be able to before we have a new federal election, I'd like to both have our hands off the tree law and have our hands off the wetlands law, at least.
Here.
So, all right, I need a 3-minute comfort break. So let's take 5.
Thanks.
All right. I think we've got all the video faces showing. All right. The next agenda item up is our LWRP, which is of course the most significant non-applicant item we're going to undertake pretty much now or ever. So it's that we've taken our time with. William asked me to sort of make sure that he had a chance to get his own, himself and his team up to speed on this, because it's a big deal, and planning department's going to want to be aware of what it is we're doing to our LWRP before we change it, because we're going to have to live with it for a very long time. So we've workshopped this through various groups a few times, but I just want to ask William to weigh in, or Amber, if you've got comments now about process going forward and how we get from this to a submission back to the state.
If you don't mind, can we, staff still needs a little time to deal with this, especially with Amber being new. Can staff get back to you at your next work session?
Absolutely. Just in terms of where we are on it, as Doreen pointed out before, this has already gone to the state once for comment, and we got back a bunch of comments back from the state, and this is sort of our last roll through it, and then hopefully we'll be able to vote it at some point with whatever further changes we need to make. And then it'll become our LWRP. We would like that, obviously, to address any issues that we feel have been not clarified, not complete, or don't fit the way we want our village waterfront to operate anymore, so that we've taken into account all the lessons learned and all the changes in the world since the early 80s. To get a look at it, see what you think of it. It encompasses, Amber, I know you're fairly new to LWRP. The policies encompass a lot of stuff, everything from the economic use of the waterfront to water-dependent recreation and its role in the community, the aesthetic and historical, and of course the things that we talk about the most, which are environmental. The watershed issues that come from having 32 square miles of Westchester County drain right into the Mamaroneck River and into our harbor, and that come from having a sensitive environment, shoreline habitat for all kinds of stuff, freshwater, brackish, and saltwater, and from having extensive floodplains that can create both opportunities and dangers for humans and animals alike.
There's one other
So
thing.
it covers a lot of stuff.
There's one other
What
thing.
did I forget, Dory? What did I forget?
Public access.
Well, I said water dependent use.
No, public
Sort of
access.
covers it.
Not really, because the general public of the state of New York needs access to the water.
Yeah, you got a point there too. That's a separate policy set of policy considerations: public access to the water, water-dependent recreation, economic use, aesthetic and historical, flood, environmental. That's all in the mix. So there's a lot of stuff.
I'm happy to hear that Amber's. I'm happy to hear Amber's with us, because our historical preservation is very important, and she seems to have some experience with that.
Yes, I'm very excited to be involved in the whole broad scope of what the reach is here. It's a lot of very nuanced planning related activities going on, it sounds like. I've been hearing a lot as well with sort of beach clubs and access, waterfront access. So very interesting.
Thomas, I'm going to be leaving the group after the next meeting. I can't come back. And a very while ago, I put out, since I worked with the working groups, the reason why I got appointed, I think, on this commission is because I created such a stir with several consultants working with our LWRP update that I have a lot of information, and I don't know who was on the board at the time, but since I have the history, I put forth a memo to Tony Gelber when he was chair a while back, outlining what needs to be accomplished going forward. What are missing from the document, just to say this, that the working groups put out are the maps, which are the most important part of the LWRP. But I have a memo that if I could find, I could recirculate if you'd like me to do that, about what's missing and what needs to be done.
Staff would
Yeah,
definitely
that would be
appreciate that.
useful.
All right, because I don't
Thank you.
remember who was on
Yeah.
the board and who isn't, who was there when.
Yeah, I think I remember that from when I first started. So my guess is you're going to find it like November or December of 2019. I think it probably would be helpful to send back around. And I was going to ask, just to be a little more clear on what the plan is on this, because I understand we got some new folks with William and Amber, and probably you're just going to take a look and familiarize yourself with this. But I know that there are open items, that it's not just reviewing a red line and saying, these changes are good. I know there are open items that I think, and I don't know, Tom, what you're thinking, but I think that at some point we'll have to create groups of people who can go try to track those open items down, inventory stuff, maps, open points in the red line. Maybe at the next work session, if that's where we're going to pick it up, I think we should just try to pick it up in earnest. I mean, from my view, this is one that I think we all probably want to see some significant movement on. And I think now that we have this working session combination with our applicant nights, if that's how the breakdown ends up working, hopefully we can do so. And I'm happy to, help, Tom. So if, need little groups to do things,
Thank
be happy to volunteer. So
Me too.
Yeah,
The good news,
we have several either map or inventory items that we're going to have to complete.
here's the good news.
Go ahead.
The inventory information that we were missing is now available on GIS. So at least the time that went by, we can now pull that information off of GIS. The other thing that's really key here in getting a document that can be approved or adding to our current LWRP is which I suggested as an update, because many communities take their original LWRP and in their amendments put the additional information. But the key thing here is who will this board work with at the Department of State to make sure that what we're doing isn't off the beaten path? Because that's what was missing on our update from day one. Working with the Department of State to make sure that we do what's required for the LWRP.
Well,
Amendment.
staff can definitely do that. When I worked in Mount Vernon, we had an LWRP, and because of that, I worked very closely with Jamie Ethier. So
Right.
I'm familiar with him, and I know exactly. I have his direct information, and staff will accommodate that.
So do I, but I think it might have to come from the Secretary of State and possibly getting another grant. I'm not sure, but we'll see.
Well, grants take a long time. I had hoped that we had a shorter timeline than that. There are definitely
Well, I know-
inventory items we got to track down, but
I hope it's that easy, but we'll see.
All right, well then, that's a question. Is there any outstanding item that would require, where the state would require something that we're not capable of doing with the resources we have at hand? So William, that question's really going to be yours in the first instance. Is there anything that we need to fill in here that we are not able to do with the resources we have, that the state will require us to do something that we just can't do?
Well, we
Because
were
then we would
supposed,
have to look for external funding.
the whole reason for this amendment was to add a watershed water quality improvement plan within our LWRP. That was the only reason why we needed to amend it. So it was suggested, because I participated in conversations with our former village manager in the Department of State, as well as others on the Harbor Coastal Zone, former chairs, it was recommended that we get a separate grant to do that, aside from amending our LWRP. But it still needs to be done. We haven't really gone forward with that. It could be in the, I can't remember if section 4 or 5 is future projects. You can put it in the section of future projects. And that's the way it was recommended. There's also the LWRP guidebook on a former agenda, and I'm still looking for it, but I can't find a former Harbor Coastal Zone agenda on Novus. I don't know why.
Okay. All right. So that's probably all we can do with that one tonight. But that'll be on for our next work session. And I think we all really want to see that one move forward. We've got,
Oh, I know why now.
our next item is this changed fee, is this new fee proposal. We've been asked to comment on that. Do people already know what they think?
Well,
I could use a little background. Sorry, Dorian, because I've read it, but I just don't know if I missed something or if someone has a little background on where this is coming from. I mean, I know where it's coming from, but like what if there's any context to this?
Yeah, me too.
I'd have to jog my memory, but as far as I know, it was an item that was brought up by Mayor Murphy, and it was essentially to further promote affordable housing, and essentially it removes the recreation fees. I know it's not very helpful, but
Is it an upfront fee paid at the time of development of a property, or is it an ongoing fee? I'm supportive of things that make affordable housing easier to achieve here, but I just don't, trying to understand whether coming at this parkland fee is appropriate or not. I just don't know enough about the background of that personally.
I didn't personally work on this one. Bob was spearheading it. I can take a look quickly to see if we have any memorandums or background that might be helpful.
Well, is this calendared for the Board of Trustees meeting in the future? And have they?
The public hearing is set to be open next week.
So have they circulated their intent for lead agency and done seeker? Probably not.
It would have been likely a type 2. In fact, I think it was a type 2.
They circulate their intent for lead agency.
No, they wouldn't, because it's a type 2 action.
Well, parks are open space, and dedicated parkland, recreation areas, and so on and so forth throughout the village. Open space is part of the LWRP, especially near water areas, and we have a lot of them. But this is talking about the fees
Yeah, that
associated.
affect the parkland.
But I construe this to mean instead of providing open space within the development for the people that live there, you could monetize that by paying a fee. This is with any development. Instead of providing the open space, and Lord knows it comes into play with our watershed and our water quality of not having more open space, but I know it's fee related, so I'm kind of on the fence with how to approach this.
It was typed as a type 2 by the board. I mean, you're welcome to make a comment to them if you feel otherwise. Or I suppose the commission's welcome to make a comment if they feel otherwise.
Yeah, for me, I guess I just don't understand how this accomplishes what the goal is and how it accomplishes it. That's where I'm not drawing the thread between the two.
Yeah, it almost seems like, I guess, well, it seems like sometimes these type of legal documents sort of have like this is why we're doing this, but this doesn't seem to, like, whereas the village wants to blah, blah, blah. I think I could benefit from just a couple sentences of this is what we're trying to accomplish and this is why we're doing it. I'm a little bit lost on it.
Right, and this is how this does that. This
Right.
is how this, it's the what, the where, and the why, and the how are missing from this document.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
the timing's tight, because if, my first instinct is to say, well, who's the proper person to come in and explain it to us? If we're supposed to comment on it, we want to understand it. And we're a bunch of fairly smart and sophisticated people, and we're all sort of struggling with understanding how this is actually going to operate. Who's the right person to explain it? But if it's coming up at October 26th, that doesn't really give us time to do that.
So if I may, it looks to me like any time there would be site plan approval required for any, and again, stop me if this is all very readily apparent, but if a site plan approval is required for a development, et cetera, based on the number of affordable houses that they're providing, that affects how much you have to pay for this recreation fee. So if you're providing 100% affordable housing, you don't have to pay anything into this recreation fee, right? Because it's essentially promoting building affordable housing. You don't have to pay that fee. I don't know how often they have to pay the fee. It looks like to me that it would be, let's see, it's a payment shall be a condition of site plan approval. So it would be at the site plan stage. So it would be a one-time fee.
Yeah. So does this just change the number? Is the change does the existing law allow payment in lieu of the parkland contribution, and this just lowers the amount paid depending on the affordable housing contribution?
Say that again about payment in lieu of the parkland
I mean, this doesn't allow anybody to get out of making provisions for parkland that can't do that now, right? It just changes the amount they have to pay.
Well, hold on, let me see.
That's what I didn't understand.
Like to me, yeah. See, I think this potentially makes affordable housing more profitable to the developer, which is a good thing because that they'll be more likely to do it. But at the expense, I think, of funding perhaps, a parkland fund of the village, which sort of counteracts dense housing that we have. So I would love to have someone make the case for this, because I don't know if I have all the facts. I'd just like to understand if that is it, or if there's more to the calculus of why this has been recommended.
I think
parkland in space too. So you can, with the way I see it, you can pay a fee and not provide that open space for the residents of the development.
And then the
Instead of-
question is whether that's even the right incentives for the type of affordable housing we want to have. But I don't know if that's true, because I don't think there's a lot of extra land in the village of Mamaroneck. I was thinking this was more of a fund that helped support the green space that we currently have, the developers pay.
So, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but the idea behind all of this was, how often are we getting development in the village that's 100% affordable housing? Right? We're not, that's almost never coming up. So the idea is to give an incentive to developers to develop almost 100% affordable housing, because then they don't have to pay this fee. What I don't know is how hefty those fees are, but that's the idea, is essentially to promote this extent 100% affordable housing.
Yeah, or what other fees they still pay that aren't haircut at all. Because, I think we're supposed to be stewards of the environment here. If they pay a bunch of fees and the one we're haircutting is the support of our green spaces, perhaps they should all be haircut pro rata instead of one. I'm open to learning more about this, but just from what we've been given, I'm also not clear. Are we commenting? Are we doing consistency? What are we doing with this?
This is just commenting.
Okay.
Seamus, you just made an excellent point about the different fees, and that, yeah, if this is just strictly pulling from the environmental fee, agree 100%. Great point.
So maybe
That in the first instance, though, this is really a staff question. Like, what is it an affordable housing development would have to pay across the board? And is this really the fee that holds up potentially entirely affordable housing, or are there a bunch of other stuff that we're leaving in place while cutting only the parkland fee? I don't know the answer to that, but I figure, especially since we're on limited time commenting on this, I figure, William, your team can answer that quicker than anybody else for us.
Well, I have a question on the seeker, because if this is really going to affect the environment, I'm not understanding how it's a type 2 action.
Well, the thing is, the effect on the environment is attenuated. If the law now was, there's no way out of providing actual parkland, but we were substituting a fee for that, that would have a big effect on open space. But if the law now, and I understand it is that you can pay a fee in lieu of banking land for parkland use, and the only thing this is changing is how much, and all we're really doing with it is lowering it for certain kinds of preferred development. That doesn't have a big effect, because everybody was getting out of the requirement to actually seed land anyway. We're just tinkering with how much they have to pay for that right.
Well, that's a big policy issue for me, because if you redevelop a site and there's an opportunity to provide some green space in our heavily impervious surface areas, especially in the floodplain, which should be more open space, because things can be built. You don't have to build from property line to property line. I know our codes allow it, but point being is, if some green space, even if it's a green roof, so to speak, where people can be, then, because our parklands are very, very crowded as they are now. There can be open space made depending on a redevelopment scenario and where it is.
Well, I think that's the point that Seamus was making, is that, if
Right.
and what Tom is making too, is that if this particular fee, is this the one that's actually getting in the way of this affordable housing? And if there isn't another fee that doesn't affect this open space and issue exactly as you're describing it, Doreen, that would be more applicable and be more influential on, and create a more realistic result to what the mayor is looking for.
So in terms of process, if planning staff is able to respond to your questions by Wednesday, in terms of what fees are paid, et cetera, then at that point, I guess we could address it again at Wednesday, and then the comments could go to the board. for next Monday. The question.
Yeah, at worst, we'll have a discussion, and I'll be able to take enough information from it to draft a quick letter back that everybody can look at. Hopefully,
I agree with that. At a minimum, we can say, even we are somewhat at a loss about this, and here are the type of questions we have, right? Even that, if it's just comments, might be informative. Yeah.
At worst, we can at least sort of recap the discussion we've just had about what our concern is.
Yeah, agreed.
Staff will do its best.
Have we gotten confirmation from village planner that this can actually happen by Wednesday?
Planning staff will do its best to get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, which brings us to the change to the proposed setback law. And I confess this is the one I've really haven't spent any time with.
I also confess. Yeah, this is the one I spent.
Well, I can say this. It's in direct conflict with our LWRP. Because if you look at what's being stricken, what's being proposed is striking the fact that only water-dependent uses can be cited in the waterfront areas, and this law, to me, opens up tidal and freshwater wetland water bodies to future development, which impinges upon wetland capacity, let me say, as well as flood control. In addition, Bill Sharp's memo of years back, because they're proposing that the Zoning Board of Appeals look at variances. I'm trying to look up as we have this meeting to find that memo. Bill Sharp's memo of several years back, when we changed our Chapter 240, and I think in 2016 or 14, I can't remember, a provision for the zoning board's actions related to consistency needed to be made, and we still haven't done that. In other words, before the zoning board actually allows what they want to allow, even if it's a variance, it needs to be evaluated for consistency. That's not in our code right now.
Also, that brings up a point that this is not just for your comments. This one will require consistency. It's an unlisted action.
So I think that there's I think there's background on this that I'd like to find, but someone tell me if they know that or think that I'm wrong on this. I believe this is similar to our recommendation from that we gave maybe early in the year. I'm trying to remember, and I think that this was Greg Cutler's argument that he made that in order to fix some inconsistencies, setting a universal 50-foot buffer was good, and then the debate was whether you then get a special permit or a variance, and if so, which board you have to come to. So I think I'd like to find what this commission provided, because I believe some of this, having this 50-foot setback is consistent with what we recommended, but I think the special permit versus variance and the ZBA versus, potentially our board for certain things may be different. Does anyone know? Does anyone remember that memo that we may have sent? I think it'd be helpful to know what we suggested and where this varies from it.
We really need to know what we previously commented on. You're right, Seamus.
But I haven't seen the memo that you had previously. However, I guess that was one of the questions, as I was reviewing this, that I had, is whether or not the zoning board is the appropriate body to issue a deviation. And the reason I say that is because the zoning board typically deals with use variances, area variances, and they also deal with special use permits. This, to me, when I was reading it, the code right now says that the planning board is the board that issues the waiver. The question is this a waiver or is this a special use permit? And if it's a waiver, then arguably the zoning board is not the board to deal with this. So that would be the question that I would have. And maybe if it's a waiver, is it the planning board or is it the Harbor Coastal Commission?
Well, because I really
Yeah,
want to,
we-
thanks, William. I agree. Because what I want to do is remind myself of where we came out before I say something in conflict to it. So only provisionally until making sure my memory is correct. I think that it's a great idea to have this standard 50-foot setback. But when you're talking about 50 feet setback off of, the sound and rivers and so on, I think that probably this commission is best situated to deal with the variance. But I just want to remember what we said last time.
So,
Well, I have a suggestion because this is under our purview. Circulation of notice of intent. This deals with wetlands also. So I don't know if the Board of Trustees circulated their intent for lead agency, typed it, did seeker. While I'm thinking about this, Department of State, since we're really changing a law that implements our LWRP, one of the policies, and interferes with wetlands values if we're going to allow variances to encroach on wetlands. And primarily we're changing a code that only allows water-dependent uses to other allowable uses. So that really needs to be circulated to the Department of State and DEC, as well as the fact that we don't have a CAF, since we're commenting. We don't have a coastal assessment form and the necessary information.
those were from March and April. Those were circulated.
Pardon?
From March and April, the EAF was circulated on March 18, 2020, and the CAF and accompanying narrative was dated April 8, 2020.
But it's
All
not
right.
on our agenda.
Yeah, we responded to that at some point. We have, Seamus remembers, we commented on this early this year. So we've got to dig that up, see what we previously said.
Also, if I can provide a little bit of historical background, what I do remember is that each board said that they should be the board to handle it. And so each board made that comment to the Board of Trustees, and the Board of Trustees ultimately decided that it should be the planning board. I mean, you're obviously welcome to make the comment again, but I just wanted to note that that has been addressed already.
Yeah,
But
they said the
isn't it-
zoning board.
What did I?
Isn't it
Yeah, you said planning, and
I meant to
what
say
what you said makes sense. That because planning is right. Planning typically for coordinated secret reviews, it usually ends up with planning, and planning thinks about some of the same things we do, just through a different lens. And for that reason, we almost never get in a fight with planning over, for example, secret typing. Typically they do it in a coordinated review and we comment to them because they deal with the same issues that we deal with. It makes perfect sense to me that planning would be the agency that determines whether there should be variance from a 50-foot water setback. It doesn't make any sense to me that would be zoning. It obviously doesn't make any sense to William either. Seems like a mistake. Just seems like a mistake. We need to check somebody's got to dig up our prior commentary on this.
it should, William, it should be under the prior agendas. So it would likely be on agendas between January and March. I don't think we save a copy of it in our files, but I think that would be the time period.
But I'm pretty sure that we have a different version of this law, correct?
What do you
Because they circulated something to us earlier in the year. This is a different version, correct?
Yes, this is the latest version. I think it was edited all the way up until May. So you are commenting and providing consistency on a new version.
So where's the new EAF and the new CAF?
That would be a question for the village planner, not for me.
I don't know. Do they have to do a new EAF and CAF every time they amend it?
No, it would only be if there were like substantive changes that would possibly affect, have any effect on the environment.
No, maybe.
And I take
mean,
it that previously, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Chair.
I was just going to say, if they made substantive edits to it, including probably changing which board makes the determination, that arguably they might need new EAF. Martin?
Yeah, I think that just to your point, if you look at section 6B, it basically gives the zoning board all the power. So it says the zoning board of appeals may grant a permit for the construction, alteration, enlargement, or enclosure of a building, structure, or parking area within the 50-foot buffer area if it determines that locating the building, structure, or parking area within the 50-foot buffer will not produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties. 2, the benefit sought by the applicant cannot reasonably be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than locating the structure within the 50-foot buffer area. Or 3, and this is where it applies to us, locating the building, structure, or parking area within the 50-foot buffer area will not have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. But it doesn't really, it takes all the teeth out of it.
That's right. That the zoning board doesn't even have the lens they would need
Right.
to review this through the lens that we need them to.
Right. It basically takes all the teeth out completely.
Well, it doesn't
Well, I
deal.
definitely think that should be a comment then. That definitely, I think, should be your a major comment back to the board of trustees.
Well, but we're not commenting on this. We're finding consistency on this one. This one is within our purview, and there are circumstances when they can overrule us. There's a standard for that, but we can say we find it not consistent.
So just out of curiosity, quick question. When you have a situation like this where the board is asking you for consistency, is the board also asking you for a recommendation about the content? Is it both, or is it just one or the other?
As a practical matter, since we get to vote on consistency, they need to know why we think what we think, because because even if they disagree with us, they then have a determination. And I can't quote you the standard off the top of my head. Maybe Christy can, but they then have a standard that they have to vote to override consistency and impose the law anyway.
Actually,
Right.
they need to come up with findings as to how we were incorrect.
Yeah, there's a standard. There's a difference. There's one standard for like a public infrastructure or building project, and there's a different, which is extremely strict, and there's a different standard for a law. And the standard for a law is a little more deferential, but basically it's an error standard. They have to find. I can't quote it, but they have to make a finding of fact that we're wrong.
Sorry to interrupt. Are you?
Yeah, no, go ahead. If you know it better than I do, please tell me.
Oh, I more have a question about process for William. Do you know what day that this was referred to the Board of Trustees? Excuse me, to the commission by the Board of Trustees?
I believe it was September 16th.
Okay, so technically we were supposed to have provided with a consistency determination, it looks like within 30 days. So if the board is not going to be prepared to comment on it next week, I don't know if you're going to be able to quickly give consistency. You would ask the Board of Trustees for an extension.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
And yeah, that seems like we're going to have to. Seems like we're going to have to.
As long as we can be provided with the EAF to CAF and all the background as to where this happens, you know, we can assume it's every waterway and watercourse in the village because it's, you know, within the 50-foot buffer. But I don't think what's been considered is if there's total build out based on this code, what will the village look like, but more importantly, what will happen to our waterways, tidal and freshwater? Because there aren't any environmental considerations here. It's just total build out within the 50-foot buffer of waterways, which that buffer isn't even enough to provide a decrease in the nutrient load.
Yeah.
Even the language is right. The language focuses on the character of the neighborhood, but you know, it's a 50-foot setback from waterways that are, you know, active environments, and that even where they're completely built up, even where they've got concrete banks on both sides, the waterway flows immediately into our harbor.
Yeah, the next section of it goes into some of those environmental things. Section 9, I guess it is, and it talks about you know, the 50-foot buffer area in addition to other criteria and standards set forth in this section for any development within the 50-foot buffer area that's permitted by the Zoning Board of Appeals pursuant to section 240-30. The site development plan must, and it goes through a bunch of things, require a landscape plan, and you only use native plants, demonstrate that the bank or coastline is stable, require that any parking areas are permeable pavers. I'm paraphrasing here. Satisfy the water quantity requirements of Chapter 294. But the last one is incorporate any other requirements to minimize the environmental impact of the development in the 50-foot buffer area on the coastal shoreline water bodies and watercourses. That's all it says.
David, it's probably not fair to put you on the spot, but you've spent as much time on zoning as everybody else on this commission put together.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Is zoning in any way equipped to put that into practice in a meaningful way?
Well, that was the point I was making. Yeah, I don't think they are. I mean, this is definitely our area of expertise. So why wouldn't it have to go by our commission? You know,
I agree with you, but I want to hear what David thinks.
But I think what you'd have to look at, and I haven't because I have my files with me tonight, but I think you'd want to look at also village law and what can be delegated to non-zoning. I believe the extent it's deemed a variance, it has to be either zoning or possibly planning board, because that has the authority.
Well, right. That's what we've been talking about, whether this is properly proposed with planning, not zoning. What I asked you.
Yeah.
Oh.
Does it come up in how would the context of it come up? That's what I'm questioning. Would it come up in the sense of not a subdivision, right? No, wouldn't be that.
Well,
no,
you
it's
know
going
what?
to come up in the context. It's going to come up in the context of somebody who wants a variance to build a new building or expand a building within the 50-foot buffer from a water course, right? That's how it's going to come up.
Yeah, I would think it's more of a zoning issue. I know people don't feel that way here, but I think it is because you're going to then have people with, what happens if you have they want one setback change for that and something else with something else, because it's very common when you're doing a project to get several variances. You apply for several because they're interrelated.
David, how often in zoning did you have environmental scientists come before you and give opinions?
A few times a year.
Because I mean, basically, we do it with almost every application.
Yeah, we do it before.
I'm just my concern is that zoning doesn't.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think if there's a way to do it, the problem is if you have several variances, the trust, if you're going to do it through, I don't know. It depends if it's an isolated issue or if it comes up in others. I mean, zoning does get involved very frequently with impacts. I think with regard to the water issues, you're much better. There's no question. The commission's much better, much more attuned to it, much more related to it, adept at dealing with it. And planning, I think, would be secondary if it comes up in a site. You see, the question I have is this: if it comes up just as an isolated variance, then I really think it's, I don't know, you're going to get planning involved with other variances as well with that? I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't have it with me tonight, but
It should only be isolated. I mean, I can't imagine that what we're trying to get to here is, wholesale neighborhood by neighborhood relief from the setback so that you can build to the lot line by the river, right? I can't imagine that that's anybody's intent. So the idea must be, and it reads to me as though the idea is that we're going to have a uniform 50-foot setback from water courses, but every once in a while we're going to see a property where we say, that really creates a hardship. And to me, this is written like it's a neighborhood and zoning issue. And to me, having the lens that I have from this commission, that's wrong. And primarily the issue is that it's too close to a water course. And that's primarily an environment and habitat and stormwater and water quality issue. And that somebody has to bring that lens to it. Whether planning's okay with that stuff. So if it said planning could grant the variance, I'd be shrugging and going, seems all right to me.
But in terms of analyzing your hardships, whether it's, area variance or use variance or what have you, that's really, zoning is very used to doing that. I mean, that's what they deal with. They're dealing with setbacks regularly. This one has, we deal with, I'm just trying to think of.
Yeah. I don't see any hardships involved in this law. But I wanted to point out another thing. Wouldn't this whole thing would fall under a wetlands permit because it's close to a wetland, correct? So the applicant would have to go before the planning board, our board, and now the zoning board of appeals. We're trying to streamline the process, and it was recommended to do the wetlands application and give our commission the authority to issue permits for wetlands. Now we're doing the opposite, it seems, with this law in involving another board to review it. And what's written in this law, I'm not seeing any allowance for or the criteria if you have a hardship. It's not a hardship, it's just a blanket allowance.
There's no hardship requirement?
I didn't see it.
Am I reading this thing wrong?
Well, what's the nature of the discretion then? I mean, I'm not following, and I'm sorry because I don't have my copy, but what's the nature of the discretion?
For any development within the 50-foot buffer area that is permitted by the Zoning Board of Appeals pursuant to 24030, the site development plan must, I'm reading the procedural stuff.
24030 is in our code. We're 240. Why is something that 240 that deals with Harbor Coastal Zone
go
to Zoning Board of Appeals?
240-30 actually deals with planning. It's a permit provided by planning currently.
It's in section.
Currently,
I was in the wrong place. I'm sorry.
Unless it's water dependent. Unless it's a water dependent use.
It's section 6B. The Zoning Board of Appeals may grant a permit for the construction, alteration, enlargement, or enclosure of a building, structure, or parking area within the 50-foot buffer area if it determines that, 1, locating the building, structure, or parking area within the 50-foot buffer will not produce an undesirable change in character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties. 2, the benefit sought by the applicant cannot reasonably be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than locating the structure within the 50-foot buffer area. And 3, locating the building, structure, or parking area within the 50-foot buffer area will not have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district.
That's what I read earlier, Tom.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, I'm rereading it for.
No, it's
for,
fine. I'm
David,
just reminding.
anyway.
All right,
Yeah, my
move on,
question-
Chair.
You asked the question. You asked the question about what is the what's creating the deviation, and what's creating the deviation, the hardship. That was the question. You were asking what's the hardship, and the answer to that is, I think in most of these situations, I guess the question is, would it be a self-created hardship? Is someone coming to do something that's there that if they didn't do it, I'm trying to think of how to phrase it in such a way. It's self-created because they're doing something that's sparking the need for the deviation.
Yes, but
And if they're doing it on purpose and it's sparking the need, then it's a self-created situation. And maybe if the Board of Trustees wants to leave the variance situation or the deviation with the zoning board, maybe your recommendation is that before the zoning board acts, they must seek the planning board and harbor coastal recommendation.
well,
It's
no.
just another option.
First of all, if it's self-created, this would be an area variance, correct? It's not a use variance.
It would be an area variance.
It's
That's
an
correct.
area variance. So the fact that it's self-created doesn't not, right. So it's not, it doesn't, the fact that it's self-created is a factor to be considered, but it does not in and of itself preclude it as a use variance would.
It's not a variance.
Yeah, we're not-
Not a variance.
The permit.
What? It's a permit. Right. So we
It's a
can,
permit.
but they purposely made it not a variance. It's a permit.
It's a special use permit. It would be a special use permit, right?
Yes, it's essentially a special use permit, but it's
What's the standard for getting the special use? Just what you just read, correct? But to be a special use permit, it can only be if it doesn't meet certain criteria, correct?
So let's think about this. Let's think about this in the context of a real project. 355 Phillips Park Road, right? We just voted consistency on 355 Phillips, and 355 Phillips, the existing building is very close to the river. It comes within, what do we say, 15 feet at one point, something like that. All of the new area was without the 50-foot buffer so that it did not expand the nonconformity at all. And they carefully designed it so that all of the new construction on the site was outside the buffer zone from the river. And they managed to design a project that did that, without, and then we asked a lot of questions about how they were going to do the construction. So with a property so close to the river in a way that wouldn't impact the river. As I read it under this, that 50-foot setback goes out entirely, and they can just go ahead and build certainly to the limits of the existing property. But if I read this right, they can build to the lot line. They can build to the river wall.
Right. That's what I said in the beginning.
Zoning standard for saying yes is that somebody shows up for the applicant and says, well, what we want to do, we can't do without invading the 50-foot buffer. And zoning board says, well, what is it you need to do? And they say, well, we want an additional unit of residential space and a rooftop deck. And then the zoning board can go, oh yeah, I guess you can't do that without building right to the river.
I've never seen them take place like that. So
We've had a lot of discussion, but the what's currently in the code is the planning board issues the permit, and the only circumstance they can issue a permit is if it's a water-dependent use. Now we're opening up waterways to more development and more impervious surfaces and the like, create problems within the wetlands and flooding. Bottom line is, we're going to have to do our work to discuss how this is consistent or not with the LWRP, regardless of who's going to do a permit.
what's the timing on this?
Wednesday.
We're
Yes.
already over time. We're gonna
Let me-
have to ask.
Sorry, go ahead, Thomas.
We're gonna have to ask the trustees for more time to comment on this because we're technically already over time. This came up very
Has the
fast.
zoning opined on this?
Hmm?
Has the zoning board opined on this?
We all opined on it first time around, and then this has been kicked back one more time. I don't know if they've opined this round.
I
Christie?
think one.
I'm not the
They
zoning
did,
board
they did
attorney,
comment.
but no.
The zoning board did comment. I don't remember what they said. I will send that to you tomorrow.
Okay.
It'll be a draft form. It'll be in draft form, but I will send it.
The one question I'll have is whether if someone does something within 50 feet, we get brought in for some other reason anyway. If not, then I agree. But if so, then maybe this works.
I'll pull up Bill Sharp's memo talking about how the zoning, some mechanism has to be, provision needs to be made for decisions of the Zoning Board of Appeals and consistency. I'll dig it up tonight.
So this is not framed as a
None
variance.
yet either.
It is not framed as a variance, no.
It's
There
a
was
permit.
one of the other choices when they were discussing what board should handle, they also discussed whether it should be a permit or it should be a variance. This has had a long history. It just sort of sat on the back burner for a
Substantively.
while during COVID. So there should be some.
I do have a question if this was circulated to the Department of State consistency unit as well as the DEC, because this is within wetlands and water bodies, which are definitely under their purview. And if it hasn't been circulated to them for comments, it needs to be. Because their laws come into play as well as what we do as far as consistency. I mean, we're sitting around waiting for the D to, you know how we coordinate with agencies? The Board of Trustees needs to do that too, because this is within the 50-foot buffer of waterways.
Maybe that becomes
Fair
part
enough.
of our recommendation or.
Right.
Did they need to?
You think will we get some more time on this or not?
Yes, I mean, I can't speak for the Board of Trustees, but my assumption would be yes. I know that other boards have comments as well, so
Okay.
depends. But my guess is that the answer would be yes.
And I can tell you that the zoning board was grappling with the same thing about who should actually have the jurisdiction to issue the deviation. And they were going back and forth about it.
See, Christie, what I wanted to go back to, if you could, is I'm baffled by this. What baffles me is I know you don't call it a variance, but it looks like one, it sounds like one, it reads like one, and it acts like one, and it follows the same verbiage. So if that's the case, who has that authority? I'm trying to think. I think it is, but I guess it's planning or zoning. Because planning can take on variances in limited circumstances under village law.
I honestly am not sure about planning variances. I only know about zoning.
Yeah, no, there's a provision in there. They can do it on certain types of housing. You can do it on if it's a part of an overall project. They can be authorized by a municipality. When I said village law, I don't mean Mamaroneck. I mean state village law.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
There's enabling legislation behind that. Originally,
Right, but in that, it's usually called, but usually when it's a planning board, it's not called a variance, it's a waiver. The planning board issues waivers.
oh, well, it's called variance in some circumstances. Absolutely.
Well, no, because we have a floodplain variance and the planning board is responsible for that. The
Oh, I know.
floodplain variance is in our code right now. And this is another consideration. This is a floodplain. 50-foot buffer in rivers and 100-foot buffers in tidal wetlands. These are all in the floodplains.
You want, Tom, I'll try to look at this tomorrow. I'm not sure I'll be able to, but I'll do my best by Wednesday to try to look at this if you want.
Yes, that would be helpful. I think we all need to pay attention to this one. This raises substantial issues about, I mean, if there's very little you could do to change village law that affects our purview more than to change how far you have to be from a water course. So.
I'll find Bill Sharp's memo, and I will work on this also for our meeting on Wednesday in case we don't get an extension.
All right. So who's talking to, what's the procedure with the trustees and the extension?
I think that whoever you want can send a letter and just, I mean, obviously you as chair would be the best route to do so, but send a letter and just say that you're not quite ready to determine consistency.
But indicate very important that the board viewed it, that your commission's been, viewing this that way. In other words, it's not just because you haven't thought about it.
Right. No, I can, this requires extensive, this requires more extensive review than we've been able to give it and more attention, but we need more time. I will get that out tomorrow. William, I'll call you in the morning. We'll just crank that out.
Well, question for you. If that's the case, does the board need to vote in order to send that letter out? I don't know.
No, it's just an administrative action.
Nope, that's administrative.
Okay.
No, not to ask for extension.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, we have run our agenda items unless, and we managed to get through all the things that we usually push to the very end and then end up kicking over to the next meeting. So that's good. Thank you all for your patience and for your focus. I think we were all a little more awake this time than we have been at the discussion, the administrative part of other meetings. Unless someone has something else they want to raise now, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much, and I will see you the day after tomorrow.
See you Wednesday. Bye, everyone.
Welcome, Amber.